Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed Shlita. Well, we hope everyone had a great Shabbos, certainly a very cold Shabbos and weekend, and it's still very, very cold here. Tu B'Shvat Sameach, is that what you're supposed to say? I'm not really sure what the proper greeting is for Tu B'Shvat, but here in the Northeast United States, it feels anything but Tu B'Shvat-like. I'm sure in Israel it's a lot warmer. It was a bit warm over the weekend, I heard. It was about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's so exciting. But we ask you to continue davening for Chayalei Tzvah and Yisrael, for Shalom Chol Petzua Yisrael. And we learn each day, L'ilui Nishmat Seren Daniel Shimon Ben Rav Dor Mishal Shem Kom Damo. So we continue our learning, Arba Halachos Torah. Arba Halachos Torah Yeshna Birchat Kohanim. There are 4 specific Torah-mandated halachas regarding duchening. Ein mevarchen ela b'lashon hakodesh, uva amida, uva nesiyas kapayim, uva kol ram. So Shulchan Aruch says in Kuf Chav Ches, which is a very long siman, a fascinating siman in Shulchan Aruch, but it says that duchening has to be only in Lashon HaKodesh, has to be standing, you have to have the raised hands, and you have to do it out loud. And if one of those criteria is not able to be met, then you cannot duchen. So let's go one by one. Halacha harishona, levarach b'lashon hakodesh. So the first is you have to say the bracha with lashon hakodesh. Ki yadua, mitzvos rabos mizbatzaos alidei dibur. So many mitzvos, as we know, are expressed or performed through speech. Ubir chachamim Mishnah, the Mishnah in Sota Daf Lamed Beis says, she mitzvos kriya shema utfilo abirchas hamazon efshar l'kaim gam b'safos acheros. That some mitzvos like kriya shema or shmona esrei or benching, one can fulfill in other languages. However, when it comes to duchening the bracha of the Kohanim, it can only be done in Lashon HaKodesh. And Amar, ko sevarachu, because the pasuk says, "You shall bless thusly," b'lashon hazeh sheksuv b'Torah, meaning only in the language which is now about to be mentioned in the psukim. So it's possible that the explanation is as such. When we say Kriya Shema, we're trying to express verbally our belief in God. So it's less important the language in which you recite, but really perhaps the meaning. And similarly, according to Shmona, when it comes to Shmona Esrei, we want to be able to express our prayers in a way that is understood. However, the bracha of the Kohanim is something that is a blessing that comes from Hashem to us through the Kohanim. And how does Hashem express himself? What language in this world does Hashem express himself to reveal himself to this world? And that's Lashon HaKodesh. And therefore the Kohanim are commanded to say this godly blessing exactly how it is written in the Torah. So that's number one. Halacha Shaniya, the second, Lomer es Birchas Kohanim ba'amid, is to say it standing up. Lefichach kohen chalash onachana let's lasheves bekisei galgalim. So therefore, a kohen who is weak, or let's say a kohen who is disabled and has to sit in a wheelchair, v'eni yachal lamod al raglav, and is unable to stand on his feet, afilu beis Birchas Kohanim, even if just during Birchas Kohanim, lo yises kapav, he shouldn't duchen. B'mnei shedin nisiyas kapayim gidin ha'avoda ba'mikdash, because this resembles the avoda, the service that was done in the Beis HaMikdash. She'emar l'sharoso l'vorech b'shmo. The pasuk in Devarim says you have to serve and bless with God's name. Moha avoda b'mikdash na'ases b'amida. What is the status of avoda that was done in the Beis HaMikdash? It was done standing. Af habracha chayvus l'he'amer be'amida. So if the avoda and the bracha, which are put in the same l'sharoso l'vorech in the same pasuk, the sheirus, the service has to be done standing. The blessing also has to be done while standing. A perfect expression and the best way that we can perform things is while standing, because you could see the person's entirety of his existence from head to toe. And then we show and express the complete nature of our strength, both our physical and our spiritual strength. And so in order that the service and the blessing of the Kohanim should be complete, therefore that has to be done while standing. So that's number 2. Halacha shlishis, the third, nesiyas kapayim, kolomar, hakohanim tzrichim lishot es yadeim beis habracha klapeim mizvarchim. So we call it Nesias Kapayim. That's really how it's known. We call it Duchening, but it's really called Nesias Kapayim. It's the raising of the hands. They have to spread their hands during the blessing towards those who are being blessed. Shene'emar, Vayisa Aharon es yadav el ha'am vayvarchem. Because the pasuk says in Vayikra that Aharon raised his hands towards the nation and he blessed them. Kohen sheyadav chalushos v'roados. A Kohen who has weak hands, or if they're shaking, and he can't hold them up, spread out during the bracha, he's not allowed to duchen and make the bracha. And it doesn't help to have, let's say, some assistance, a string, a pole, a stand, or something that will allow him to have his hands raised. Because as the Mishnah Berurah writes in Kuf Kaf Ches Nun Beis, that the Kohen has to raise his hands with his own strength and without any assistance. B'tam ha'inyan bi'ir Reb Nachman Breslev. So we get all kinds of explanations here. We get Arizal, Zohar, Halacha. Now we have a Reb Nachman from Breslev explains. That raising the hands is an expression of how much our will of our heart, the depth of the will of our heart, that we want to bless the Jewish people with love. There is a direct connection and applicability between the hands and the heart. And the hands are therefore next to the heart. And the hands are an expression or a vehicle of expression of the heart. The pasuk in Eicha says, we will raise our hearts and our kapayim, our hands, to Hashem in Shemayim. So when the Kohanim spread their hands to bless the Jewish people, so they are expressing the love in their hearts towards the Jewish people with such great strength. And this is such a great sign of raising my hands. That's how much I love the Jewish people, and that's why we do it. Hosef Rav Kook, so Rav Kook adds to that, that the expression of duchening is something about the future, because they're what's ahead of you in your body. You could stretch your hands out in front of you, so that's what comes first. So therefore the Kohanim raise their hands, again, to express our desire and our prayer to a world that is complete and a world that is completely repaired. Halacha haraviyas, so the final halacha, the fourth one, is levarich b'kol ram, is to do so out loud. Kedei shekol hamispalim beis haknesses yuchol lishmoa, so that everyone in the shul is able to hear. Shne'emar amor lahem, the pasuk says, say to them. Kederach she'adam omer lechavero. The Gemara in Sotan Daf Lamed Ches tells us the way someone speaks to a friend. In beis haknesses katan, maspik she'akon yivarach b'kol beinoni. If it's a small shul, a small crowd, then it's enough that the Kohen can speak in a regular medium voice. Shekach regilim ledaber b'makom katan. This is how we speak in a small place. V'im beis haknesses gadol. However, if you're in a larger crowd, tzarich levarach b'kol ram, then you have to make the bracha out loud. Kach shegam im haya mevarach levad haya kulam shomim, also that if he was even just making the bracha by himself and there was no one else, everyone would be able to hear him. Kohen shekolo chalush. If a Kohen has a weak voice, ad she'i efshar kimat lishamo, until it's almost impossible to hear him. Lo ya'ala lisas kapav, he shouldn't duchen. Aval im yesham kohanim acherim shekolam nishma hetev. However, if there are other kohanim that are heard well, mutar lekohen shekol chalash levarach b'mehem. So a kohen with a weak voice shouldn't duchen if it's doing solo. But if there are other kohanim that can be heard, then the kohen with the weak voice can certainly join in. So there's a lot that we covered here, 4 important halachos. And again, for those of us here in the diaspora where Birchat Kohanim duchening is far more rare than it is for our brothers and sisters in Israel, then certainly we should take these halachas extremely seriously. But thank you so much for joining us. Please continue davening for Chaylei Tzvagan Yisrael. Thanks for joining us again for another week of learning. Hope you have a great day. Stay warm, and we will see you here next time.